All right, so this is probably my favorite thing to talk about on God's green earth. Um, Welcome, everybody, to Agile. Um, so, before we talk about Agile, let's talk a little bit about what came before it. And some of this should probably be pretty familiar. I'm going to go back to headphones. I thought I could do it without it, but I can't. But you can't run out of material. No matter what you do, you can break 1,000 legs, still get another takeaway. So you can figure that. You know what I mean? Like,
You like the phones, Kyle?
oh, that did not work all the way. You get to a point where you're like, all right, somebody say something.
How do you like the headphones?
Wonderful, outstanding. Okay, much better. So once upon a time, the way that you would do projects is you would do scoping. You would, the project manager or sometimes the business analyst would talk to your customer, talk to the users, figure out everything the software needs to do. And then you plan. Okay, so this is all the things we need to do. How are we going to do them? How many people do we need? What are they going to work on? What should the architecture for this be? What framework are we going to use? All that kind of stuff. Then you would build. Plan the work, work the plan. So everybody gets their instructions, break it up into teams and little pieces and stuff, so everybody builds it all. Then you test it. All right, did it work? And if it all works, then we release it. This is a very intuitive way to do a project. Everything kind of makes sense the whole way through. And you've probably done something kind of like this, even if it's just school projects and shit. You figure out what you got to do, you plan how you're going to do it, then you do it, and then you see whether or not you did it right. And then if it all checks out, then you put the software out or the project or whatever. So the problem with this, actually, you tell me. If you've been a part of a process like this, what kinds of problems have you run into?
When it doesn't go according to your nice, beautifully illustrated plan
Yeah,
almost
no
immediately.
shit. Yeah, somewhere about here in the process is a saying that no plan survives contact with the enemy. So I go, oh shit, none of this works the way that we thought it did. What else? What else goes wrong?
You're testing way late in the game. So
Oh yeah.
if you find out near the final hour that your whole thing doesn't work, you're pretty much up a creek.
Yep. That's a real rough one to find out. Um, that's real. Hope we built it right, especially if this build is being done by all these disconnected teams, and all their stuff worked together separately. And as soon as you jammed it all together, it didn't work anymore. Oops. That's especially rough because once you found that, all these like hyper efficient split out teams are all working on different projects now. Womp, 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 womp. What else goes wrong in this process?
What happens if your scope changes while you're halfway through the build?
Yeah, dude. Um, you're halfway through the build, and the customer goes, "Oh, psych, never mind. We wanted to do all these different things." But that wasn't in the plan. And so the inevitable response from the team is like, "Fucking stupid fucking customer. Didn't know that you should have asked for that up front. You know what? We're going to charge them a bunch of money for this. We're going to make them sign a bunch of new contracts. God, if we'd known this ahead of time." Any other problems you can think of with projects you've done that have worked this way?
People are bad at budgeting long scale time.
Yeah, people are pretty bad at absolute estimation in general. Now, what's funny is that people are actually pretty decent at relative estimation. So if I say, how wide are these 4 markers? Like, the estimates get all over the place. If I say, this marker is 3/4 of an inch across, how far across is all this? Then people are actually okay at that. But that's certainly not what we're doing here. Here we have a binder full of requirements, and we go, all right, how long is that going to take? And people like to pretend there's a science behind that. They'll do all these like dependency graphs or Gantt charts. They'll go, oh, this should take about this long, and this should take about this long. If I pad this one, because there's a lot of uncertainty behind it, oh, then I add all the critical path together, and I get this. That's crystal ball reading. It's tea leaves. There's like, because whatever number you come up with, that's how long it's not going to take. Another problem that I have with this style of project management is this whole time we're going through this, we have delivered 0 value. The person who actually wants the software gets nothing, 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 all of it. That's a problem. It's especially a problem in software because even people who think they know what they want in their software usually don't. They'll say they want a bunch of things, and then the second they use it, they go, oh, this sucks. And you, the developer, go, well, that's exactly what you asked for. Like, all right, doesn't make it not suck. And so now nobody's happy. If only we had a way we could get something in somebody's hands frequently, iteratively. Maybe they could tell us that it sucks at the beginning. And I go, well, that's exactly what you asked for. I go, I know, and it sucks. So what if we did this other thing instead? And what if instead of having your heart broken and millions of dollars of wasted budget and shit, what if you went, cool, glad we learned that. Awesome, let's try something else. So this process goes by a couple names. Non-pejoratively, call it traditional project management. Pejoratively, it's referred to as waterfall. Because as we're going through all of these steps, you generally don't go back to building once you've tested, which is especially a problem because, as we've noticed, you find something that's broken, well, that team doesn't exist anymore. Maybe a contractor can fix it. If customer gets something in their hands, they go, this sucks. You generally don't rescope the project after that. So around 2001, in the 90s, there were a couple of groups that were trying to rectify this. It went by a couple different names. One of them was Scrum. Scrum was an attempt to break out of the waterfall. Another one was XP, or extreme programming. So,
It's the most 90s name I've ever heard.
no shit, right? And there's another one that comes from manufacturing called Kanban. And there were a couple of also-rans in this group also. Crystal Clear, a few others. Almost entirely dead at this point. But all 3 of these are still around. So these 3 movements in 2001, they're like, hey, I feel like we're all kind of circling around the same idea about how software should get made. What if we all met at a resort in Snowbird, Utah, and tried to find a way to get on the same page about what this different radical belief system that we all seem to share is? And what those people came up with was the Agile Manifesto. So if you go to this hyper modern looking site, I'll throw this in the chat. I want you all to take a couple minutes and read through it. All right. So we're going to take, let's take 7 minutes, and I want you to read through two things. One is this. These are the values. That's what's on the first page. And then I want you to go to the principles. There's 12 principles. And what we're going to talk about for the rest of the lesson is what the opposite of these things would mean. Because everything in Agile sounds super straightforward and like, why would you ever disagree with it? But there are people who disagree with it. In fact, these are still radical ideas. And so, for example, if people didn't value processes and tools over individuals and interactions, what's the sales pitch for that? What would that sound like? And same thing with all the principles. Our highest priority is to satisfy the customer through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. Well, if it's not that, then what would it be? So let's take 7, 8 minutes, somewhere in there, and see if you can think of what the opposite of these values and principles would be. Go. couple more minutes. All right, let's get back together. So, give me some immediate takeaways, just overall, to the stuff in the manifesto as a philosophy.
It's definitely more personable. And keeps it's an interesting cycle considering depending on the business you deal with. Some businesses they want to be like in it like every step of the way. I think that's definitely the more healthy interaction. Though I do feel like
Yeah,
there will be some old-fashioned companies that just want to like throw it at you, you make a result, you pay and move on, which definitely needs to stop.
yeah. And then you, at the bottom of the waterfall, you give them the thing that they asked for, and they go, "Well, I hate this though.
I, was,
You didn't want to be involved."
I just remember my old boss. She was like running the business by herself, just small business owner, and I just know how many fires she always has to put out like every week. So like day to day interaction would be like asking a lot from her probably, but maybe there's a compromise there. It is called agile, so I'm assuming there's room for changing of plans and compromise.
Absolutely. So a lot of those fires are caused by planning. It's very rarely like, "Oh, well, I didn't plan for this." The like constant firefighting is like, okay, well, it sounds like you don't have enough people. Well, I don't have enough people. Cool. Why did you do a whole bunch of things that required more people than you had? So we'll talk about that more later. More like overall takes on Agile as a whole.
This kind of paints what I think is a compelling and valid picture of like current dysfunction. Things like, let's see, working software over comprehensive documentation. Like the idea that like, hell, we documented the hell out of it, but it doesn't fucking work and it's bad, but we documented it. And it's like, well, who fucking cares?
Yeah.
Like,
So if you've ever had a job where there's like a project management binder, That's like the thing they're talking about there. Documentation takes a bunch of different shapes, but the big binder, that's the result of the big planning session. You had all the scope docs and you have all your plans, and then that becomes irrelevant on the first day of build. Everything starts changing, and that binder never gets looked at or updated or anything. And so in lean terms, that means it's waste. It means we should have never done it in the first place. Cool. One more just overall take on Agile.
I'm sure there's like strategies for dealing with this, but yeah, I'm curious about how you avoid like the meeting bloat type stuff with this. Like it seems like it could lead you into all hands on deck meetings a lot. That, yeah.
Oh yeah. So let me ask you this: how do we handle that at the school? Both like instructor to student and instructor to instructor. Like, there's not a whole lot behind the scenes that you guys don't see. So how do we handle it?
Short, open, expected meetings that don't have a set agenda for people to mumble, bubble, fussle about, and then opening up to collaboration throughout the entire day for people to jump in as they have time.
Yep. We have no staff meetings that aren't stand-ups and stand-down. So like as a whole school, we have a stand-up together, then the staff has a stand-up together, and as a school, we have a stand-down together, and as a staff, we have a stand-on right after that. That is all of our meetings. There's no weekly staff sync. There's no monthly, like all hands. There's no other thing that we do. We have little 5 to 10 minute chats at the beginning and end of every day. Kind of gets the job done. We'll have like a retreat or something. I think we've done that twice in the year and a half I've been here. But outside of that, the need for any of those other meetings evaporates. Because all of the other times that like you need to sit down with somebody and work through something, it's never everybody at the same time. It's like me and Ahmed, or me and Ahmed and Damon, or me and Christine, or Christine and Brian. And so those things just happen as they need to happen. Doesn't need to be a meeting. Cool. So I want to dig a little bit further on, let's start with the values. And I'm going to do an experiment. Let's do this in discussion groups. So individuals and interactions over process and tools, working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, responding to change over following a plan. So I'm going to split you into 4 groups, and I want you to think about what's the sales pitch for the opposite of this? Because like I said, this sounds super reasonable. The opposite of this can also be made to sound reasonable. So figure out what that is first, and then come up with at least some reasons why the Agile value system, why that could be considered better. It doesn't even need to be something you agree with right away. Figure out what the strong, compelling reason to value process and tools, comprehensive documentation, contract negotiation, and following a plan. Figure out why somebody might care more about that, and then come up with some reasons why the things on the left might be more valuable. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to split you into groups. Fuck, lost it. Cool. Check your room number. That corresponds to the value. Figure it out. Go for it. Like the sound of those browns, man. Yeah, that was a nice. I use blues at home. It's like anybody who's ever been to one of my lessons knows. It's loud as shit. The echo in my room. But yeah, my next one will definitely be browns. I think. Mhm. No, those are membranes. No, membranes are super quiet. So like you have a couple different designs. So um, those are mechanical switches. A membrane, it's like a sheet of rubber, and when you press down the key, it presses down the rubber onto like a button. So there's like a thing in between the key and the button. The problem is they wear out. So the longer you have the keyboard, the less well it starts working because the rubber just loses its elasticity. Things like this. There's a couple of different designs. They're all basically the same. They're technically mechanical switches, but they're not like those. Little scissors that are like that, and then you press them down and they make contact with the terminal like that. All of those switches have roughly the same design with a couple differences on them that is part of what makes them click or not click or whatever. Those are robust as fuck. Like no, reds are silent. So they don't even make that sound. But they also don't have an actuation point. So as you're pressing it down, you can't tell when the key triggered or not. I think it's actually kind of nice in gaming because it gives you the illusion, like with ASDF, of like continuously variable control, even though it's not. But you can like press it softly and stuff. There's like browns and blues. When the key has triggered, that's what makes the snap sound. And so you know, and so you generally, it takes practice, but you don't have to press the key down all the way. You only need to press it down until that click happens. Yeah. Yeah, so that's it's called a 70% keyboard. And like, I ordered 2 of them recently and like, I didn't like them, but. Mhm. Yeah, like I want one. I never use my 10 key or like any of the other, especially in Vim. Like, I don't use the arrow keys for anything. Yeah. Also, I have an external numpad. Like on my desk, I can just plug in USB. I'm gonna check on these groups.